Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patriot Underground. Today is January 9th, 2022. Thank you so much for joining me to discover the truth beneath the surface. So today I'm going to be doing a coffee chat. Wasn't able to get one out yesterday, but hopefully today will be a good one. Hopefully you guys are having a good weekend. I certainly am. I know that, like I keep talking about, I know I sound sometimes like a broken record when I talk about the energy level, but I'm just trying to document what I'm experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And it is getting to be absolutely insane, the amount of things that are going on right now. Now, with Kazakhstan, that has obviously been in the news, quite a big story there, but there's a lot more significance to Kazakhstan than I think a lot of folks realize. And if you were listening and paying attention to some of the reports that came out yesterday, you'll know that Kazakhstan had a very, very important location in that country, Astana, which if you rearrange the letters, you get Satan. Seems to be happening quite a bit lately. But looking at Astana and a map of Astana, you can see that it's really laid out in the same way that Washington, D.C. is laid out with a whole bunch of satanic and Masonic and Illuminati symbology and imagery. It's all there, folks. And so this was captured. So in the process of, so what you really have in Kazakhstan is you've got the surface level where you've got the people rising up and taking back their country, more or less. And from what I understand, all the the reports that are surfacing there are that they really went at it with the military. I mean, this was a kinetic fight, and that initially, we're going to find out a lot more details, but the people rose up there in mass, and there was a kinetic fight initially, and they, in essence, got the government to agree to resign. And this is a major, major move because Astana, from what I'm understanding, beneath the surface here, from the white hat tactical perspective, they took down what was the capital of the New World Order and the Illuminati. And then if you also couple that with news coming out of Switzerland, again, beneath the surface type news, where, beneath the surface of Lake Geneva, the massive dome underneath there that was CIA headquarters has been taken down already. So those two sites, those two locations are massively, massively important. And then, of course, we've still got the dumbs being cleared out in South Africa, the Omicron situation. So this war is still very much kinetic. It's still very much going on. However, I think, as I was suggesting before, the energy level is prompting us all to understand that the end is very, very close, or shall we say, the end of the preparation phase as far as the public is concerned for the Great Awakening. Now, the end of, I think, most of the major battles, most of the major kinetic fighting is probably weeks away at this point. In fact, we may even see a major, major development in the next week or so. I know that I think the last podcast I did, I was talking about how Simon Parks had mentioned the 19th and the 20th as being very important dates. He also put out another post suggesting that if Biden, in fact, did go forward and do a State of the Union address, then something will have gone very wrong with the White Hat plan. So we'll have to see, because the other option is, too, that they could kick the can on this State of the Union. They could use COVID as an excuse. They could do any number of different things. But will they allow Joe Biden, the White Hats, will they allow him to, or whoever that actor is playing him, Arthur Roberts, James Woods, who knows? Is that individual going to be allowed to give a State of the Union address? I don't know. Be very interesting to see. But according to Simon, that's a very big tell right there. And he thinks that we're going to see some major, it sounds as if he seems to think we're going to see some major markers, some major intervention before that happens. And then I also mentioned Cliff High talking about emotional spikes that he's seeing in his software in the third week of January. So this is some big stuff. And by the way, Cliff also mentioned some big moments, some spikes happening around the 7th. And of course, we just saw what transpired in Kazakhstan. And we have to remember, of course, and I think that my audience understands that this is a global war. This is not simply just about America. We talk about, I give the perspective of the United States as a U.S. citizen and, as an American, but with full understanding this is a global war. So when we talk about major markers, we talk about major events, we have to look beyond just what's happening in the United States and even the things that we're focused on. Because one of the things that I've been talking about repeatedly is that in this war, there's so often all of these different distractions. And then in the wake of these distractions, we find out that these big markers have been hit, that these big events have happened. And the reason for that is kind of like, like 107 refers to Trump being like a flashbang in a sense, look over here so you don't see what's happening over there. And that's kind of in some ways how he referred to, Trump and how he functioned in this entire process. Because even, Juan, of course, he'll tell you, this isn't just about Trump. This isn't just about the election, even though Juan focuses on the election. And really, one of the big differences between Cliff and Juan, I think, is that Juan focuses a lot on the election and, seeking justice on the election as a means of, in essence, kind of beginning to piece our republic back together, whereas Cliff kind of sees it in a much larger, broader context, and that the election really is just one facet of it. Once you have the public wake up to the fact that we have a common enemy, that we're at war with China, that we're at war, not just, China in general, but certainly, elements of China, the CCP, and really, in essence, the Cabal. And people realize what their agenda was, how they put this whole thing together, how they planned it, how every different institution that holds influence and wields power in society was wrapped up in this conspiracy, how they planned it for over a decade with Operation Lockstep, how they bragged about it. Once they find out the scope of this plan and what they really intended to do with the 5G, how they intended to use the thing that goes in your arm to get that nanotech inside of you that would then interact with the 5G. Of course, the GO and the GH. I'm going to try to put this video on YouTube, so I'm going to speak in code here because it's been a while since I posted on YouTube. I miss my YouTube family. But this was all part of the game, folks. They inject all this stuff in, and it was supposed to interact with the 5G. And then, of course, Trump knew about all this way back in 2017, Covfefe. That's why he took specific steps, executive orders. There were two in particular that were crucial to making sure that that the United States, we would be protected from this 5G chip, which was, again, it was designed to interact with the thing that goes in your arm. And of course, there are all these reports coming out of all these people bleeding out of their eyes and their ears and just spontaneously combusting. We know that the GO, I mean, you've seen videos of it, folks. At certain frequencies, it does different things to the body. I mean, they can manipulate it in various different ways with various different frequencies. This was all part of the plan, the 5G. And by the way, they keep pushing back the rollout of the 5G in the US, and the latest date is, wait for it, January 19th. And then, of course, you can also throw into the mix Trump's Truth Social, which is due to drop, I believe it's February 21st, I want to say. And by that point, I have to imagine that Trump's probably not going to put out Truth Social while we still have the status quo. I think it's probably going to be with the new internet, the quantum internet, which is why just yet another reason why I think we really entered into we're so close, but we're entering into the eye of the storm. I think that the next few weeks are going to be absolutely explosive. But I also have gradually been sort of changing my perspective on, the length and the scope of what's going to happen after the big event. Now, a lot of folks have different opinions on this. Some people think we're going to have this big event. We're going to have 10 days of darkness. We're going to go through a period where it's going to be very, very difficult, but then it's going to resolve relatively quickly once all of the disclosure happens about all of the good disclosure. There's two different types of disclosure that need to happen. Obviously, there's the disclosure of all the evil, but then there's also the disclosure of all the good stuff, right? All the technology, all the med beds, all the wealth, the revaluation, all that stuff. So there are a lot of people who think that, okay, we're going to go in that direction. We're going to go through this brief period. It's going to be very difficult, but it's not going to last for very long. And then there's another camp that says, well, wait a second, it's not going to be like that necessarily. We're going to be dealing with for years and years of the repercussions of what the cabal has done, and really the repercussions of the thing that goes in your arm and this attack that they have waged on all of us. So we're going to, history will be the final, we'll have the final say on that, of course. But I tend to think, I don't think that we're going to have years and years and years of misery and knockdown, drag out fight once we have this big kickoff happen. I honestly do not believe that to be true. In fact, I think we're going to be. I'm more in the first camp. I'm not to be overly optimistic, folks, but knowing what I know about what's coming, or at least I shouldn't say no, but believing what I believe based upon the research and based upon the folks that I've talked to about what's coming, the magnitude of what's coming in terms of the good stuff, which is why we focus on both on my show. And so often, of course, we're focused on some of the negative. Well, I shouldn't say some of the negative. It seems like it's all negative at this point. So we focus on that. But I oftentimes like to, remind folks what the world is going to look like once we get to the other side of this thing. And I certainly do believe, I've talked about, forget about the med beds and all the non-terrestrial tech and all of that stuff that I believe is going to be disclosed very, very soon. I think that just a secret military thing that goes in your arm that's been talked about. They did an article about it in Defense One, and it was almost a couple of weeks ago now, and it was discussed in the article that they planned on basically making this information about this new thing that goes in your arm that supposedly has zero chance of causing an infection because it has none of the virus in it. And they plan on making this information public within the time frame now that we're talking about. Could be any day now. And then we've also got on another stage, we've got Ghislaine Maxwell and that drama continuing to unfold. We know that we've got waiting in the wings of this drama, we've got John Durham, of course. We've got Julian Assange, who's been extradited to the United States. You got all of this stuff coming together. And you got to ask yourself, even if you were a skeptic, but you knew all of these facts and you were paying attention to all these facts, but you were still a skeptic. How could all of these things not tie together in some way, shape, or form? Doesn't it seem like too much of a coincidence that all of this stuff is happening? That all of these nations around the world are rising up, militaries are rising up against their government, siding with the people. Obviously, it's not happening universally everywhere. We're seeing the tyranny escalate massively in certain places. The war on the you-know-what continues to intensify. And that, by the way, is true even where I am right now. I'm one of the fortunate ones. A lot of us are here in the U.S. because we haven't seen the extremes that other countries have seen, like just, for example, in Australia. And now, what they're trying to do in Canada. I talked about that recently on my show. But really, from Boston to Quebec, it's just, they are rolling out this tyranny. It's getting worse and worse with these passports and showing your papers. And by the way, that was also supposed to coincide with 5G as well. They were going to use what they inject to track and trace you. And they also had awarded patents to Pfizer to enable them to do that using this technology. So yeah, if you didn't survive the first wave, the second wave, if you did survive the first wave, second wave, all of these things that go in your arm, well, your fate is that you were going to be tracked and traced, and basically your DNA be modified and changed so that you really weren't even human yet, which they set it up legally. So that meant that you could then no longer fall under the jurisdiction of a human being and have the same rights as a human being. You could be bought and sold, traded, and yeah, and eventually they were going to just upload your consciousness onto the dark web and euthanize you. Just slow, systematic genocide. That's what this is all about. But the White Hats, they saw it coming. They knew that this was going to happen. And again, all of these things, all of this disclosure is happening in such a timely manner. And by the way, in terms of big events, I mean, I talked about Astana in Kazakhstan. I talked about Lake Geneva, underneath Lake Geneva. But also the Chongqing, or is it Qing Chong? I can't remember which Chongqing or Qin Chong in China was one of the major markers there. There was a major fire or an explosion. I believe it happened on Friday. And this was one of the locations in China, one of 3 locations that had been mentioned in the Q drops multiple times as being a huge indicator, a big marker there. And I believe the other 2 were the Three Gorges Dam and then the city of Wuhan itself, because we know that all of the mischief, shall we say, that goes on underneath Wuhan, and we're finding out more and more how central of a location this was for the Cabal and their evil. So that happened on Friday. So there's yet another major marker. So yes, we have to look, we have to do a little bit of research. I mean, yeah, this is the type of war, like Nino Rodriguez was saying recently, it's the type of war you have to research to figure out that you're in. And you have to put the pieces together, because you wake up every single day, like we all do, and get out of bed, brush your teeth, take a shower, go get your coffee, go to work, go through the motions. You're not going to know if you're watching the mainstream media and you're not paying attention, which is exactly where they want you. You're not going to know that you're even involved in a war. I mean, let's think about it, folks. How long have we actually been involved in a war with the Cabal? Well, ever since we were born. We were born into this war. Our entire lives, we've been under attack. I mean, I think that's pretty well established at this point. They poison everything. They have been waging war on humanity long before any of us were alive on this planet. This has been going on. So that means that there have been generations of people who have lived and died and have never known that they were under attack, have never known that they were at war with an enemy, have never known how much has been hidden from them, how much of their potential they had stripped and robbed from them, not just individually, but collectively, how much better their lives could have been, what they could have experienced if they didn't have this invisible boot on their neck, this silent slave master barking into their ear for their entire lives. So many people didn't even realize that. They lived their entire lives from the womb to the tomb, and they never knew who the enemy was or that there even was an enemy. I mean, think about that. And then think about where we are right now. Think about what we're doing, what we're talking about, the war that we're engaged in, our consciousness, how it's directed and focused at the enemy. Think about it. The significance of that. How the fact that we're awake is changing the world and will continue to change the world. So many people out there, I mean, again, we're the pre-awakened. Everybody who's alive on planet Terra is going to have their consciousness rocked to the core. I believe in a very, very short time. The clock is ticking. I can almost feel it ticking inside of me. I mean, it's just so... I struggle to find words for what I'm feeling. I really do. And I've used a whole bunch of different metaphors, and I don't want to use the same ones and recycle the same language over and over and over. But I'll tell you, folks, it is so close. And the people out there who aren't aware, who aren't paying attention, they are about to be in for the shock of a lifetime. And to put it that way, honestly, is to really just to minimize. It doesn't even sound like it comes close to rising to the level of the reality that people are going to witness, what we're all going to bear witness to. The whole notion the whole concept of what's possible, the whole concept of reality, what's real, everything is about to change. And for us, thank God, we've been operating with a different moral compass really than the rest of society for a very long time. In essence, we've had to be rogue, we've had to be outlaws, we've had to be, we've had to be the ones who held the light, held the torch, and protected that light, that flame of truth while it was under constant attack in a world of deception. And I think for us, that's going to be one of the greatest gifts when all of this is said and done, is that we'll understand that all of that work had not been in vain. And not just our work, of course, the work of really generations of patriots, of soldiers. And of course, in this modern era, we're starting to, really accept and appreciate a broader definition of what it means to be a soldier, especially in this digital war and this information psychological battle, which I think in a lot of ways it's even worse than being in a trench. Wait a minute. No, it's not. You see? For a second there, you thought maybe I might go down that road. But the truth of the matter is, folks, is that imagine if you were in a trench. Imagine if we did have to fight this war the same way that they fought World War I, the same way that they fought World War II. As we feel all of this energy approaching this big event, this climactic moment, it feels like we're approaching D-Day. Juan O'Savin uses that metaphor all the time, but imagine if we were actually not in the comfort of our own homes, but rather that, instead of that, we were in some transport boat under fire with everybody around us, throwing up on their shoes, getting ready for battle. And I'm not suggesting out there that all the patriots, that we wouldn't be up for that if that's what history called us to do. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I am suggesting is, folks, count your blessings that we're not in that situation. That as soldiers in this modern era, at least our role as digital soldiers, this of course is in a different category from all of the actual men and women in our military. But as far as us, as we're concerned, this citizen militia that's primarily really functioning as an army online and battling for the truth. Well, consider how much better it is to have gone down this road as opposed to a civil war, a hot war that would involve all of us and the devastation that would cause. And I know that I brought that up several times, but I think that it's worth repeating when people get really frustrated. And of course, I'm in a lot of ways talking to myself, because I get so angry sometimes and I get so filled with rage that I just want war. That's what it feels like in those moments. But then when I really stop and I think about the alternative to what we're facing and what it would have been like had we gone down a different road, I think to myself, well, thank God that the White Hats chose a different option. Thank God that they were able to convince Trump to run and to be a part of this so that we could have this war be fought this way as opposed to all of us fighting one another. And like I say, yeah, it's possible that we could still go down that road. I'm never going to take that off the table because, so much depends upon, we have to do our part. There's no question about that. And the timeline, I think in a lot of ways has been dictated by that. The awakening of the people, how many people are awake, how many people are out there on the street protesting. And now what you see is just unprecedented levels of people standing up against tyranny all over the world. But this needed to happen. And it still needs to increase, by the way. We're not seeing enough of that, in my view. We're not seeing enough of that here in the United States. We're seeing it all over the world, but we're not seeing it in the numbers that we need to see here in America. And I think that in the coming weeks, that's going to change. But everything that's been happening, everything that had to transpire for us to get here was 100% necessary, because we are being assisted by the Galactic Federation of Worlds, by the Alliance. But as I've talked about many times, their assistance, their, I forgot what term it is that they use. I think it's their prime directive. But in essence, what guides them, their prime directive is that they can only help a different species, a different race of people, the human race, for example, us, if we have collectively unified against evil and are requesting that help more or less with one voice as humans, as humanity. And that process is happening. I mean, humanity's coming together. We can see it. And now that that's happening, I believe that it's opening up all of these different doors, all these different thresholds. And on all different levels of this war, that's really what it's been about. Events happening that represent markers that really are thresholds for us to go into the next phase. And Juan talks about that so often from a legal standpoint in terms of January 6th and the election and all that. But there are multiple different examples of that. And of course, the non-terrestrial groups that are helping us, the Galactic Federation of Worlds, they have certain prerequisites that need to be met. And humanity needs to come together and really reject, and first of all, identify this evil, reject this evil, and then collectively do everything that we can to mobilize against it. And with every passing day, it's just so exciting for me because every time I see a new protest, I see millions of people out there on the street, I think to myself, wow, we are really moving in the right direction. And then, of course, you've got these tyrants like Macron, literally declaring war against his own people. I mean, this guy, I don't believe that's the real Macron, by the way. I do believe that that's probably an actor. This guy is honestly getting up there on TV and saying, yeah, I want to make everybody's life miserable. That's the goal. That's the tactic. We're going to do this to the bitter end. And he keeps doubling down on it. Declaring war on his own people. And guess what? The French people aren't having it. And I have to say, to all my listeners out there in France, I have so much respect for the French people for showing up. I mean, I don't know how many Saturdays it is in a row at this point that your countrymen and women have come out in defiance of this tyranny. And the more he doubles down, the more people come out. I saw a video, I think it was last weekend, where everyone was out there in the pouring rain on a Saturday. And that's the level that it needs to reach. I mean, my hats are off to the French people. They know how to protest. They know how to stand up against tyranny. And I think we do too here in America. The problem is that we're still in the process of shaking off the apathy. And we're still in the process of coming out of the coma here in America. And I think that, it's ironic because we've been gaslit here in America all of our lives to believe that we just have, we're the greatest country on earth and we have it better than everyone else does. And who knows, maybe in some context, in some sense, that might be true. In fact, I think in certain cases it is. But I think we're coming to find out also that America, in terms of this silent war, I mean, we have been the bullseye the entire time. The silent war has been raging here, and the attacks, the mind control, the poisoning has been worse in America than anywhere else in the world in recent history. And that, of course, is why it's taken Americans so long to wake up, because we've been under such heavy attack for such a long time. We've been gaslit for such a long time. I mean, people all over the world, they'll tell you that, at least in their media, in their mainstream media, which is definitely controlled, it's a lot less controlled all over the world than it is here in America. And as we know, this war really hinges upon information. It's all about the control and manipulation of information that's being weaponized. And here in America, it is far worse than it is, I think, probably anywhere else in the world. And, Gene talked about this during one of our chats. And he was talking about how, in other parts of the world, the people understand. They get it. They know they can identify a lot more than we can. And a lot of that has to do with, of course, the fact that their culture hasn't been completely ripped away from them. That's another thing that's happened here in America that's, I think, probably at a level that exceeds any other country. They've been constantly drilling holes in the foundation of our society and our culture and ripping and robbing us of everything. And that we have really in our nation's short history, our short, proud history, they've attacked everything. They've ripped away our culture. Cliff High talked about how multiculturalism, this buzzword that they use, is just a complete lie, which I agree with, by the way. You can have people from all over the world, but it still has to be a melting pot of one culture. This idea that you can have people of various different cultures all mixed together and not one identifiable thread, well, that's just horseshit, folks. And that's the reason why our society is so disjointed right now in a lot of ways, because our so-called leaders have convinced the masses that it's not a good thing to have an identity as a nation, an identity, a culture. The whole idea of a culture is only a good thing if your skin is a certain color. Because again, what they've done is they've just taken the whole concept of racism, they've just reversed it, and everyone else can have a culture. You can have your culture if you're not white and you are of the same political ideology as the establishment. If you fit those two criteria, then you can have a culture. But if you don't, well, you're a racist. Or if they can't call you a racist, they'll come up with some other choice word, for people who don't fit into their mold. Black people who don't think the way they do. They got plenty of words for them. That's the way that they operate. That level of hypocrisy. And that's one thing I have to say. I think that even people who aren't awake, a lot of people out there who are still under the spell, even those people are sick and tired of the hypocrisy. The truth of the matter is that this ridiculous plastic culture that they push is supported by just about nobody in our society. And what they do is they use the media and they use Hollywood and they use all of their different toys and tools to trick people and to gaslight them into thinking that other people think this too, that this is the mainstream culture. I mean, think about it. Think about the sick garbage that they put out there and how it's bad enough. The content of some of the stuff they put out there is bad enough. But what's worse is the deception is leading people to believe that their sick, twisted mind represents the majority of America or any other country. This is what they've been able to do. And of course, because humans, especially weak-minded humans, have a natural inclination to want to join the herd. And the Cabal knows that. They knew that if they could convince humans that the herd is really going along with their agenda, that they would just go along with it and they would identify with it. Because more than anything, humans don't want to be isolated because they feel a sense of safety in the group, at least, sheep-like humans, not us. That's the reason why, we weren't born to fit in. We were born to stand out, as Jim Caviezel says. And our role in this whole thing is going to be to reconstitute society at a grassroots level. And there's going to be, one of the beauties of God's creation is that, as beautiful as he creates all of us to be, with all the talents and with all the different things that we possess, we're all incomplete without one another. We need each other. And the Great Awakening is going to be an understanding of that, an appreciation of that. Once again, we're going to celebrate one another. We're going to learn to love one another. And that's going to be the default. It's not going to be distrust. It's not going to be looking at people as if they're the obstacle, as if they're the problem anymore. We're going to look at each other, I think, in general with goodwill, because by the time this is all over, we're going to have rid our planet of evil. And whatever evil remains after the cabal is taken out, I mean, we're going to have an entirely different attitude and tolerance level for nonsense when this is all over as well. I mean, evil's not going to thrive here again. The Alliance is going to make sure of that, and we are going to be the ones who are going to be educating the public, helping to heal everybody, taking care of our communities, and from a grassroots level. That's where strength comes from. It starts at the local level, and all of us are going to be playing a vital role in strengthening the core of our society once again. It really is such a vitally important role, and I'm just so honored to be among those who are helping to bring great patriots together and to unify against the enemy. And I have to also say, of course, big news over the past couple of days was the passing of Cirsten W. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments on that. Now, there is a lot of information about her death that still needs to come out. Of course, Michael Jaco and Scott McKay have shared a lot of this information. Certainly some of it looks very, very suspect. And it looks as if she was denied the type of treatment that would have saved her life, which is kind of ironic, really, because Michael Jaco was really just talking about this a couple days prior to her passing. In fact, I learned about her passing when I was emailing with Gene because we were planning our next interview. And before I had even had a chance to go on and see anything about Kirsten's death, he actually shared that with me. And I know Gene is very upset. He was very, very close with Kirsten. And I have to say that I never had a chance to meet her, although I had tried a couple of times to reach out to her to see if I could get her on the show. I had an enormous amount of respect for Kirsten, and I certainly think that her personality was a very, very strong, bold, no nonsense. I mean, she didn't put up with any crap from anybody. And, people can say what they want about whether or not they agreed or disagreed with her on certain issues. There were some things that, I didn't necessarily agree with the premise of some of the arguments that she made, but never. And by the way, the same is true for, so many of the insiders that I listen to. There's not a single one, I don't think, that I'm in 100% lockstep agreement on everything. But one of the things that I really respected about Kirsten was, first of all, the high quality of her intel. I mean, that's something that I don't think anybody could take away from her. She was connected with some very, very knowledgeable people about what's unfolding. But really, probably even more importantly, the content of her character. She was a very, very strong woman. She was bold. She was fearless. She did not back down to anyone. And in so doing, was a major, major asset to the Patriot community. And I know that a lot of people out there are really feeling her loss. And, like I said, I mean, I never had a chance to meet Kirsten. I had hoped to. And I know that she's going to be deeply, deeply missed. And what I hope will happen is that in the same way that, she and many others, their courage inspired me to start my journey. I'm hoping that, now that Kirsten is gone, they say that a tree is best measured when it's laid down. And I think that now that she's gone, maybe a lot of folks who are inspired by her will choose to honor her by getting off the sidelines and getting active and becoming a part of what Kirsten represented, becoming a part of this movement, being a soldier for the truth. And regardless of how she died, whether it was simply something that happened or whether it was something that was made to happen, we're going to have to find out. But regardless, Kirsten knew the risks. She understood, I'm sure, the risks, as we all do. All of us who put skin in the game, we understand that this is a war, and we accept that. But we also know that it's victory or death. If we don't win this war, if we don't stand up, if we don't find our courage, if we don't risk everything to win, to triumph over evil, then we have nothing. And you don't wait until they've stripped you of all of your ability to stand up to them, because by that point it's too late. And you don't bow down to fear. And that's one of the things that I love so much about Kirsten, is that was her fearlessness. And that's exactly and that's the same thing that we love about Trump. It's fearlessness. Standing up to the enemy, not being intimidated, not backing down, willing to risk it all. Because that's what this is all about, folks. That's what this test is all about. That's what this life is all about. It's about knowing the right thing, doing the right thing, standing up against evil no matter what. And that's what I'm going to do. I mean, I love my life. I don't want to die, but I certainly refuse to live on my knees. I just won't do it. And whatever I have to do toward that end, I'm prepared to do. Because in the end, folks, all of us are dead. You know, it's like they say in that movie Gladiator. You know, in the end, we're all dead men. But how we choose to meet that end is what separates us, is what defines us. Whether or not we're willing to stand up for something, whether or not we're willing to die for something. Martin Luther King Jr. said it himself. Someone who hasn't found something that they're willing to die for isn't fit to live. And certainly Kirsten knew who she was, what she represented, what she was willing to die for. And who knows, perhaps she did. But look at the legacy that she left behind. Look at all the truth that she left in her wake. Look at all the people, all the lives that she touched, all the folks out there that she inspired. That, to me, folks, is a successful life, no matter how you slice it. And even though I didn't know Kirsten personally, I can say from a distance here, just observing what I see, that she lived a good life. So rest in peace, Kirsten. So hopefully folks enjoyed this coffee chat this morning. Please let me know in the comments. Please subscribe to all of my different platforms. I'm on YouTube, BitChute, Podbean, Rumble, and now I'm also on Spotify. I recently added Spotify, so please give me a follow over there. And let me know what you thought of the show. Please do anything you can to support my work, and I'll be back soon with another report. God willing, excuse me. All right, folks, God bless and Godspeed. Have a great rest of your weekend. I'll be back soon. Patriot out.